let's sing Little Trip to Heaven together. And I will hold up the pictures, and hopefully I will have them in the right order, and I won't screw that up. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Little trip to heaven on the wings of your love. Banana moon is shining in the sky. I feel like I'm in heaven when you're with me. I know that I'm in heaven when you smile. Though we're stuck here on the ground, I got something that I found, and it's you. I don't have to take no trip through outer space. All I have to do is look at your face, and before I know it, I'm in orbit around you, thanking my lucky stars that I found you. When I see your constellation, honey, you're my inspiration, and it's you. You're my North Star when I'm lost and feeling blue. The sun is breaking through the clouds, don't you know it's true? Honey, all the other stars seem dim around you, thanking my lucky stars that I found you. When I see your smiling face, honey, I know nothing's gonna take your place, and it's you, 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 and it's you. Shoo-be-doo-ba-ba-da. How'd you do?
Only This Morning by Dan Gerber. In 100 trillion years, an actual number, though we can't begin to grasp it, the last traces of our universe will be not even a memory, with no memory to lament it. The last dust of the last star will not drift in the great nothing, out of which everything we love or imagine eventually comes. Yet every day, every 4 hours around the clock, Debbie prepares her goat's milk mix for the orphaned filly, who sucks down all 3 liters of it. Gratefully, it seems, as if it matters more than anything in the universe. And it does, at this moment, while the sun is still 4 hours from rising, on the only day that matters.
The morning prayer is titled Tiny Prayer for Those Who Need a Miracle, and it was written by Micah Busey. May you marvel at the fact that the sun rose this morning and that you woke up, remembering that these everyday things were once thought of as mysterious wonders to celebrate. And may you reframe the mundanity of your day to call you to awe not in saccharine dismissal of the very real disappointment and suffering of the world, but in an activating move to remind yourself and everyone that if miracles like sunrises and awakenings continue to occur, you just might be able to conjure even more possibilities just by paying attention.
Happy Sunday morning, boys and girls of all ages, and welcome to Judson Memorial Church. It's Kids Day here at Judson, virtually speaking, of course, our annual celebration of Judson children and youths. My name is Andy France. I am the grand poobah of all things Judson Sunday School. Whether you are a Judson Sunday schooler, a Judson parent, blissfully child-free, a longtime Judsonite, or a first-time visitor who just happened to tap the wrong video on your YouTube app this morning, you are very welcome to this Kids Day service here at Judson. For those of you viewing today's service on Judson's website, www.judson.org, I trust by now that you have accessed today's bulletin. If not, simply scroll down and find the link that will enable you to distinguish whose kid is doing what, which cute kid is doing what. Before we go any further in our service, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that the children of Judson Sunday School, who in pre-pandemic days and in the highly anticipated post-pandemic days to come, might typically be seen running and playing and be heard laughing before the outstretched arms of the angels you see behind me. But they would not be the first children to run and play and laugh among angels on these grounds. Judson Memorial Church stands on the unceded land of the Lenape people. And so on this Kids' Day, and in a spirit of humility and repentance, we acknowledge the children of the Lenape community, past, present, and future generations to come. One of my favorite bands in the whole wide world, Wilco, has a song, "I am trying to break your heart," which you are going to accuse me of doing just that when I tell you that two longtime Judson Sunday schoolers, Alice Gottlieb Alston and Josiah Montreville, are graduating from high school this year. Not to mix musical genres, but I don't remember growing older. When did they? Alice Gottlieb Alston is the daughter of Mackie Alston and Nick Gottlieb. She's the big sister of Penelope. She will be attending George Washington University in Washington, D.C. this fall, attending the business school, although she will wait just a little while to declare a major. Josiah Montreville is the son of Janae Cawthon and our dear good friend Jean Montreville. He's also the brother to sisters Jemiah and Janiah. He will graduate from Brooklyn Technical High School, and he plans to take a gap year before going off to college. He has already got a job lined up, and if he's not careful, he might find himself working for Judson Sunday School. Just saying, Josiah. So, congratulations, Alice and Josiah, on this momentous occasion, and congratulations to your parents as well. This morning's ancient testimony comes from one of my favorite versions of the Bible, Mark Russell's delightfully sarcastic and very funny, "God is disappointed in you." Oh, surely not you. I've asked the children to read some excerpts from Mr. Russell's version of the book of Exodus. So take it away, kids.
God appeared to Moses in form of a burning bush and told him to go free his fellow Israelites from slavery. When a flaming shrub tells you to do something, you do it.
Moses returned to Egypt, demanding the release of all Israelite slaves. The Pharaoh thought his radicalized grandson was just going through a phase, that if he just held out long enough, Moses would shave off his beard and the shag of arrow poster would come down off the wall, and everything would go back to normal. But Moses was serious, and so was God. A point he drove home by turning the Nile River into blood, creating swarms of frogs, and giving everyone's skin boils. And to raise the stakes, Moses summoned the angel of death. And so, the Israelites got to leave Egypt. God told Moses to take his people into the desert and await further instructions.
The Egyptians had made running a government look easy, but Moses quickly learned that it's actually a kind of grind. Especially when you're leading a nation of people on what is going to be a 40-year nature hike.
In no way Moses could be everywhere to make sure nobody killed anyone else, stored their food, or ate something that made them sick. And even when he could catch someone in the act, there wasn't much he could do about it. You can't exactly put someone in jail when you're marching 10 miles a day.
1, 2, 3.
Moses did his best to keep order, but people kept getting sick. Fights would break out, and people were so fed up with this situation that they threatened to leave and go back to Egypt. For a while, it looked like as if in the midst of all this crime, the chaos, that the tribes of Israel might simply dissolve and everyone would go their separate ways. Moses racked his brain for ways to keep his nation of hikers together. Finally, God decided to help Moses out. He called him up to the top of Mount Sinai and gave him a bunch of stone tablets. "Be sure to tell everyone that these are coming from me," God told him. "If they follow these laws, I'll always be there to watch over them," God said. "That's the deal."
To commemorate his deal with the people of Israel, God told Moses to build an ark of the covenant, a gold trunk decorated with angels. Inside the trunk, they kept the 10 Commandments and some other mementos. They also built a mercy seat, a little seat on top of the ark, so that when he came down from heaven, God could ride around on top and kill people as they carried the ark with them.
After a few days, Moses came back down from the mountain with a bunch of laws. These laws he told them, were given to him personally by God. A gasp went up from the crowd. This is serious poker. People were far more worried about disobeying God, who, unlike Moses, could be everywhere at once. So they cut down on cheating, robbing, and killing each other, and generally cleaned up their acts.
Of hikers was saved.
Today's new testimony comes from Holy the Firm by Annie Dillard. A blur of romance clings to our notions of publicans, sinners, the poor, the people in the marketplace, our neighbors, as though of course God should reveal himself, if at all, to these simple people, these Sunday school watercolor figures who are so purely themselves in their tattered robes, who are single in themselves, while we now are various, complex, and full at heart. We are busy. So I see now were they. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? There is no one but us. There is no one to send, nor a clean hand, nor a pure heart on the face of the earth, nor in the earth, but only us, a generation comforting ourselves with the notion that we have come at an awkward time, that our innocent fathers are all dead, as if innocence had ever been, and our children busy and troubled, and ourselves unfit, not yet ready, having each of us chosen wrongly, made a false start, failed, yielded to impulse and the tangled comfort of pleasures, and grown exhausted, unable to seek the thread, weak and involved. But there is no one but us. There never has been. There have been generations which remembered, and generations which forgot. There has never been a generation of whole men and women who lived well for even one day. Yet some have imagined well, with honesty and art, the detail of such a life, and have described it with such grace that we mistake vision for history, dream for description, and fancy that life has devolved. So, you learn this studying any history at all, especially the lives of artists and visionaries. You learn it from Emerson, who noticed that the meanness of our days is itself worth our thought, and you learn it, fitful in your pew, at church.
Anybody remember the one about the talking gefilte fish? Okay, so technically there's no such thing as a talking gefilte fish because gefilte fish have no mouths. For my fellow Goyim this morning, gefilte fish is a mix of ground fish, matzah meal, eggs, a little seasoning shaped into balls or patties, then baked, chilled, and served with a horseradish vinegar sauce, usually on the Shabbat, the Sabbath. The very idea of a talking gefilte fish is absurd. Actually, it was a talking carp. Perhaps you remember reading the story, as reported in the New York Times, of two fishmongers from New Square, New York, a small Hasidic community about an hour north of New York City. As fish tales go, theirs is the biggest whopper this side of Don Knotts in The Incredible Mr. Limpet. It seems that on January 28, 2003, Louis Novello, a 30-year-old Ecuadorian immigrant who had been working at the New Square Fish Market for 7 years, was preparing to chop up a 20-pound carp to make into gefilte fish, when suddenly the carp began talking to him, in Hebrew no less, shouting apocalyptic warnings and claiming to be the troubled soul of a revered elder who had recently died. I'll give you a moment to process that picture. Mr. Novello, who the Times was kind enough to inform us speaks no Hebrew, nor carp, we're left to assume, looked around to see if the voice had come from the slop sink, the other room, or the shop's cat, because, after all, what's more illogical? A talking fish, a talking slop sink, or a talking cat? But no, the voice had come from inside the fish. The mouth of the fish opened and closed, and it was a really funny voice, Mr. Novello said. Thinking it was the devil, Mr. Novello screamed and ran to get the proprietor of the store, Mr. Zalman Rosen, who called his employee Meshuggah. But when Mr. Rosen approached the fish, he too heard it speaking in Hebrew. It said, oh, and forgive my poor Hebrew pronunciation, I can only hope it's better than the carp's. But it said, Zarich Shomira and Hasef Ba, which essentially means that everyone needs to account for themselves because the end is near. A panicked Mr. Rosen tried to kill the fish with a machete-sized knife, but the fish bucked so wildly that Mr. Rosen wound up cutting his own thumb and had to be taken to the hospital by ambulance. The fish flopped off the counter back into the carp box and was butchered by Mr. Novello and sold. Residents of the New Square community have mixed feelings when it comes to the talking fish tale. Some claim it was all just a hoax, while others believe it was a miracle and that God was revealing himself to the two fishmongers. As for Mr. Novello, he still believes the fish was the devil. I don't believe any of this Jewish stuff, he said, but I heard that fish talk. Like Mr. Novello, I too do not speak Hebrew, carp either, but if a fish began talking to me, I do not believe I would need a translator. I would know the end is near, and I would definitely account for myself, or at least my shorts. That's not to say I haven't heard a voice or two in my time, but they usually emanate from within my own bulbous head rather than the mouth of a talking fish, what some people refer to as their intuition or their conscience. Once on an episode of Seinfeld, Kramer referred to such a voice as the little man inside you, instructing George Costanza, you got to listen to your little man. To which George replied, my little man's an idiot. There are some people who believe their inner voice to be the voice of God. I'm not so sure, given the many mornings which find me staring into my closet, trying to decide what to wear, and listening to the voice inside my head as it says, not the brown pants. Wear the blue ones. I have read where God is said to be concerned for our well-being, even to the point of knowing the number of hairs on our head. And let's face it, some heads offer God more of a follicular challenge than others. But I can't imagine the Lord God of the universe being all that concerned about the color of my pants. Besides, you've seen the way I dress. You can only come to one conclusion. My little man's a fashion idiot. Still, it was this voice I was listening to not too long ago when I clearly heard it say, "Andrew, try not to be such a jerk." Now, there's no need for me to bore you with the reason behind the reproach. Let's just say that you wouldn't have to be God to know that on more than one occasion, it is well deserved. But that does sound like something God might say, doesn't it? Try not to be such a jerk. When you think about it, there is an awful lot of theology in such an admonition. It even sounds like something one might read in the book of Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, and try not to be such a jerk. For a while, I thought that perhaps that's what I would speak about this morning. I could share my reflections on the jerk inside each one of us. Maybe point out a few jerks in the Bible. Perhaps even get topical and point out some of the bigger jerks in our society today, except, of course, well, where to begin. It's called Kids' Day, not Kids' Week. But it takes one to know one, as they say, and in pointing a finger at others, I guess I probably made just a good case for why I was being admonished in the first place. So instead, I decided to focus not on the message, but on the messenger, and the sense that perhaps we all share, to one degree or another, in being called into conversation with God. The Sufi mystic Rumi characterizes it as a lover seeking his beloved, and says, God has planted within you the desire to search for him. Now, perhaps that's a bit too romantic for your taste. You might prefer instead the Episcopalian bishop John Shelby Spong, no theist he, who nevertheless describes the calling this way. There is something deep inside me, and I suspect deep inside every other person, that requires us to commune with the source of life. Perhaps that is what the hymn writer named the love that will not let me go. Perhaps it is only an illusion, but illusion or real, we know its presence. It is like a mystical center of life that can neither be described nor denied. It is something beyond me, yet always it seeks to meet me in the depths of my own being. All religions have their sacred scriptures, each bearing witness to a time when God was, if not more discernible, well then at least much more loquacious. That the voice of God might emanate from the mouth of a new square talking carp would be right in keeping with our biblical stories of old, where God has been known to pop up in the darndest of places, saying the darndest of things. No one seems to have heard from God more than Moses. God said to Moses, "Come up to me on Mount Sinai, and I will give you tablets of stone." And then, for the next 40 days and 40 nights, God was like a chatty Cathy doll. God talked Moses' ear off. Now, what I find most interesting about their conversation is just how specific God would get, down to the most minute detail, not just the 10 Commandments, but everything else. The kind of offerings God expected: gold, silver, and bronze, blue yarns, and fine linen. The design of the Ark of the Covenant, I mean the actual design, the kind of wood it should be made from, the dimensions. God gives Moses the blueprint for a tabernacle, teaches him how to build a bread table, instructs him on the best place to put a mesh grating for an altar, tells him what kind of utensils he should use and the type of pegs he should hang the utensils on. God goes on and on for 10 whole verses describing how to build a lamp stand. It's like God is Bob Vila from This Old House with actual plans for everything. And there is to be no deviation from the plans. God knows exactly how everything is supposed to look, saying over and over, you are to construct it following the plans I've given you. God designs curtains for the tabernacle. Thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen and blue. And thou shalt make the loops of blue upon the edge of the one curtain. 50 loops shalt thou make in the one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make in the edge of the curtain that is the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold of one another. And then God turns haute couture, designing turbans and sashes and telling Moses exactly how the holy garments worn by his brother Aaron and the other priests should look, from the shoulder pads all the way down to the underwear. You shall make the robe all of blue. It shall have an opening for the head in the middle of it. Seriously, do you really need God to tell you to put an opening in a robe for your head? With a woven binding round the opening so that it may not be torn. On its lower hem you shall make pomegranates of blue. I've heard that the devil wears Prada, but this is ridiculous. Oh, and what's with all the blue? Maybe that was God telling me to wear my blue pants after all. Oh, and as for that underwear, you shall make for them linen undergarments to cover their naked flesh. They shall reach from the hips to the thighs. And those holy drawers came with a warning. Aaron and his sons shall wear them when they come near the altar to minister in the holy place, or they will bring guilt on themselves and die. Talk about needing to account for your shorts. Meanwhile, poor Moses has been sitting on the top of this mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, listening to God yammering on and on and on about everything from checkered tunics to how to make olive oil. And all Moses can think is that if God doesn't stop talking soon, I'm never going to be able to get all of these tablets down the mountain. By the time you have finished reading Moses' story, you realize that God told Moses everything. Everything except how to get to the promised land. Oops. Claims of God communicating directly with man would not be limited to the dusty pages of biblical history, or man for that matter. Perhaps the best known example of this might be Joan of Arc, the true life French heroine who began hearing divine voices when she was about 12 years of age and rose from country peasant girl to lead her nation's army at 17, helping France eventually win its freedom from England. Born some 600 plus years ago, Joan of Arc has served as inspiration for everything from music to video games to Japanese anime to television shows and, of course, movies. The 1928 French silent classic, The Passion of Joan of Arc, is not only considered to be the greatest film about Joan, but it's also regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time. Yet for my money, you cannot go wrong watching Victor Fleming's 1948 Joan of Arc, which starred Ingrid Bergman, Ward Bond, and a deliciously creepy Jose Ferrer. There isn't a French accent within a mile of this movie. There is some of the cheesiest Hollywood dialogue you will ever hear, and all of the men in the movie wear the oiliest, bowl-like haircuts seen this side of Mo Howard of Three Stooges fame. But Ingrid Bergman, oh my God, how gorgeous was she? Because of the stupid pandemic, I have spent the past 15 months holed up in my apartment, mostly watching Turner Classic Movie Channel. I have seen many an Ingrid Bergman film, and I have a huge crush on her. I would have followed Ingrid Bergman anywhere. If, like those two New Square gentlemen, Ingrid Bergman had come up to me and told me that she was hearing voices not from God, but from cod, I'd have said, darling, of course you are. Let's go fishing. Catherine Harrison, the author of the biography Joan of Arc, A Life Transfigured, says, Joan frustrates efforts to reduce her to mortal proportions. What can explain what her voices told her, whether directing her movements in battle or scripting answers to her inquisitors? And then Ms. Harrison says this: we don't need narratives that rationalize human experience so much as those that enlarge it with the breath of mystery. It is this breath of mystery which is at the heart of the eternal conversation between God and humanity. It is this breath of mystery we seek to engage in worship in our churches, synagogues, mosques, and lately our living rooms, or wherever it is you happen to be watching Judson's online services. Through song, the reading of our sacred texts, and the participation in rituals of remembrance, we attempt to draw nigh unto its presence. We retreat from this world in hopes that, free of distraction, we might find ourselves in communion with it. Or we plunge into the deep end of the good fight, where we believe this holy mystery dwells, surrounded by those who would establish its kingdom here on earth. And we pray. My favorite line about prayer is the old line from the writer Anne Lamott, who said several years ago that the two best prayers she knows are "help me, help me, help me," and "thank you, thank you, thank you." And then one spring, after admiring the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C., she tweeted, "Third great prayer after help and thanks is wow." In his book, The Varieties of Religious Experiences, A Study in Human Nature, psychologist William James wrote, "The God whom science recognizes must be a God of universal laws exclusively, a God who does a wholesale, not a retail business. He cannot accommodate his processes to the convenience of individuals." Intellectually, I understand what Mr. James is talking about. It makes sense. In order for God to be God, she must be beyond all manipulation. The problem is, and with all due respect to Mr. James and, well, the garment district, our lives are in retail, not wholesale. The concerns we face every day, the need for a job, an affordable place to live, the longing for love, the caring for our families, dealing with illness, even COVID-19. These are individual retail concerns. I'll be the first to admit that I do not understand how it is all supposed to work. But surely the God who is beyond all manipulation must also be the God who is beyond all limitation. And so we pray, help us, help us, help us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And even on occasion, wow. And we listen. You and I may not have been destined to hear the voices which spoke to Joan, nor may we have been chosen to receive the very, very, very specific instructions given to Moses, and perhaps for that we should all be eternally grateful. But that does not mean that God is not attempting to speak to us today. Times may have changed since the days of Joan and Moses, and no doubt our ideas of who or what God is have changed with them, and surely my ideas about God may be different from yours. Perhaps what unites us today and unites us with history is that the need to engage God has not lessened over time. We are all still listening for God's voice. We are all still hoping to be heard. Who knows? Maybe we're all crazy. Maybe we're all a little touched. Maybe we have to be. To be living in a world where it seems at times as if love has reached its limit and cruelty and hatred know no bounds. And yet, as people of faith, our hope is that God is still here and still calling us into conversation. That God is present in our joys and present in our sorrows. That God is present in our questions and present in the appalling lack of answers. That God is present when we are at our best and present still when we are at our worst, possibly even whispering in our ear, "Try not to be such a jerk." Our lives are a conversation with God. Listen up. Talk back. So it's that time in our service when we take the morning offering. If you are able and you wish to do so, you will find all of the available online ways to contribute on your screen. While you are doing that, let me just say that over the decades here at Judson Sunday School, we have presented music by Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Kinks, Wilco, Green Day, REM, Tom Waits, Natalie Merchant, Nick Lowe, The Decemberists, Loudon Wainwright III, Iron and Wine, Tom Petty, The Weepies, Randy Newman, Jane Siberry, The Indigo Girls, Steve Earle, Pete Seeger, Iris DeMent, Sid Straw, Greg Brown, Joan Osborne, and Nancy Griffith. But until today, we've never featured Radiohead. Here with no surprises is Owen Laurie. Thank you, Owen. And thank you, Theo and Sebastian and Charlotte and all of the children who sang and read for us today. Thank you so much. I also want to give a great big thank you to my assistant, Lulu Fogarty, not only for this morning's new testimony, but also her fabulous weekly show, Judson Sunday Arts. If you haven't seen that yet, you need to check it out. I believe she's going to keep it going into the summer. And it may be moving to 10 a.m., I'm not sure. She'll have to let us know about that. But thank you, Lou. I also want to give a huge thank you to Asia Harris and Hinko and Zach and Andre and Brendan on sound for all their help putting this service together. The work that they do throughout the course of this year is unbelievable. So thank you for that. Thank you, parents, for hanging in there with me this most difficult of school years. And thank you all for being with us today here at Judson today as well. We certainly appreciate your virtual presence. Before our closing song, Crazy by Willie Nelson, I will leave you with a poem by Joseph Mills, The Last Speakers of a Language. My son asks for the cheese honker. I don't get it for him right away because I don't know what it is. He raises his voice, cheese honker, cheese honker. When I ask, you want the cheese honker? He becomes enraged. No, he yells, cheese honker. Finally, I say, show me. And he toddles to his bedroom and points at the rubble. I rule out anything he can reach, but nothing else seems like a cheese honker. So I start holding up objects at random. When I get to a sparkly key ring, he grabs it and waddles away. That was years ago, and now only my wife understands when I ask where the cheese honker is, just as we're the only ones who still talk of pop cheeps and things worth 2 dotties. We learned the vocabulary of our children, and then they grew away from it, leaving us the last speakers of a language, the curators of a way of life that briefly flourished, and then, as the door jamb marks rose, disappeared. Have a wonderful summer.